Welcome back everyone for yet another video in our Electron application series for your portfolio. In this video, we're going to be covering the networking side and creating the API that, or not really the API, just like the network API for us to create connections to our REST API. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to navigate to our data folder. We're going to create a new folder here called API. And let's go ahead and create a new folder in here. Let's call this network.ts. In this video, we are going to be using Axios. So we just need to import Axios from Axios. So we just want to import the Axios function. We are going to export a function. We're going to call this get. We're going to make a few different types of requests. And what we want to do here, actually, let's do type. Type is going to be request type. We'll create a request type. We'll do get. We will do post. We will do patch and delete here. So let's go ahead and export a function, and let's just call this request, and we'll do a type, or we'll do a path first, right? We'll do a request type. We will do a set of params, and we'll do a body. That's going to be of type T, so we're going to need to add in a generic T here for this function. Let's open that up. All right. So now we have a path. We have that needs to be a string. We need to do type, request type, parameters, and a body. Let's go ahead and return a new promise of type T, right? So we want to return a promise with type T in there. And then we can also do or void here. And let's do resolve and reject. And we'll open this up. And this is where all of our code's going to go. So let's just do return. We just call Axios, sorry. And then we're going to provide a method, and we are going to give it type. We're also then going to do URL. In this URL, we need to create a base URL here, right? So we need to have like a constant base URL. In a production application, normally you would do some sort of environment flag here, and you'd do two different things for development versus environment, or development versus production. But in this application, we're not doing that. We're just gonna do http://127.0.0.1:6061, and that's gonna be our base URL. That's gonna be the local host on my computer set to the port that our API is currently listening on. So let's go ahead and enter in that base URL. And let's do slash, and we will get the path in there as well. So now we have the URL. That's where our endpoint's going to be at on our thing. So we can take a params object, we can do params, and then we can do body, or data, sorry, and give that to body. Axios, we can then we take a response object from there. And what we want to do is we want to resolve, or if response dot status equals 200. Sorry, fat finger that. We want to resolve the response dot data. Yeah, that's fine. We won't handle a 204 error here, or not error, but a 204 status. 204s are just returning on null. So let's just say if this is greater than or equal to 200, and the response dot status is less than 300, then we'll do that. Otherwise, we will just reject. So that should be fine. Just wait for Axios to do its request, then we resolve and reject based on that. So this will create a request function. We use Axios here and enough. Okay. So what we want to do now is we are going to create a couple files here. We want to make one called user.ts because this is what we're going to be logging into. Let's go ahead and import request from /network. We're going to change this obviously to data react. No, yeah, just data slash API slash network. Like that. All right. So let's go ahead and start defining our functions that we're going to be using to log in with. We need to query a couple different endpoints, right? So the ideal way to do this is we're going to do an export constant login user equals, and let's create, we need some arguments for our body. So let's just do a payload, :I login user payload. We'll take that, and we just want to do data interfaces. Or can't we just do interfaces? Okay. We can just do interfaces there. And what we want to do is we want to return request. Now we want to give it a path. Obviously, this is going to be login, or whatever the path is in your routes for the user, which this should just be /login. We don't want to include the slash though, since we're doing that already. If you were to do anything after this, like /login, you would do that. So now we need the request type. This is going to be a post request to a login endpoint. Params, we'll just do undefined, and then we want to do a payload here. So then we are doing that, right? Export constant register user equals payload I register user payload. We'll have to create a thing for that, an interface. Let's go to where this one is and export interface I register user payload, and we are going to take in an email, a username, and a password. So those are the three things we're going to require when someone logs in. So now what we can do is we can return request. We can do register. This is again going to be another post request. We don't have any parameters, so we can just leave that undefined, and then we can enter our payload. Let's go ahead and add our import for the register user payload, and that is both of those. So let's go back into the actions user file, and instead of using get here, I was actually testing my get method in this offline thing. I just forgot to remove that. So let's go ahead and import all as user API from data /API/user. And now we can do return user API dot login user, and we pass this to payload, and that should let us log in. Let's create another one. Export constant register user async equals create asynchronous thunk. We are going to call register user, and we are going to pass in an async function here. We're going to do the payload and I register user payload. I'm going to open that up, and we are going to return user API dot register user and give it the payload. And now we have created our networking layer for logging in and registering a user. We can get rid of this IAPI user import that we're not using up here if you haven't already. Must have been from the last video. So yeah, this is creating just the API layer, right? So now these functions can be hooked up via React using the connect functionality or just using use dispatch. We'll go into that as well. I originally said I wanted to use class components for this stuff, but I'm not going to any longer. I'm going to be using functional components. So we're going to be getting rid of some of this stuff as it was just like testing. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. Get rid of that. And we can get rid of this. Get rid of that. And we can just export the default function app. All right, cool. So now that those are done, we can just get rid of all that stuff. All right. So we need to create a couple more things here for authentication. If we want to be able to authenticate our user to our API, we are going to need to do export constant. We're just creating a single, actually we need to create a selector, not connection here, sorry. So let's go to selectors. Let's create a new file, user.ts. And let's go ahead and type in import, create selector from Redux.js toolkit, obviously. And then we're going to want to constant get user state equals state. We want to import our state from there. We're going to import the user state as well and change this to data objects. And we just want to return state dot user. So it's getting that. Let's do constant get user token equals state user state. And now we are going to return the state dot token. And let's go ahead and export a constant get authentication or get auth token. We'll just call it auth token just to shorten it up. And we will create a selector. We'll get the user state because since the original default state of state is going to be passed into the create selector, we want to pull that state out. And then this is going to pass that user state from the return type of this into here. And we're going to call get user token there. And that's going to create our selector. Okay. So that's getting that. Now let's go ahead and go back into our network file here. So we need to add in a header. We need to do authorization. We want to include a bearer token, right? And what we want to do here is we want to import store from data object store. And then we're going to import the get user or get auth token, sorry, from data selectors user. And then here we are going to call get auth token and store dot get state. We're going to use that. Okay, so you don't also have to do this. You could include this as like a request parameter, and then anything that needs like an authentication token, you could include these functions for your payloads. So you could do like auth here, and then make it like string, and then you would be able to return that. Actually, let's do it that way. Yeah, we'll do it that way just so you guys can see that. So, so let's just do auth, or we'll just do token. And then instead of doing this, we'll just do bear and then all token inside. That way we don't have to use any of these. And let's grab the user API. We need to include a token string and token string. Let's go ahead and put token here. Token here. These aren't actually going to need a token since we're logging in and registering. So they don't really need one. But now what we can do is we can destructure this. We can pull get state out of our asynchronous thunk using the thunk API. And then we can type these as well. So let's go ahead and type this with We're returning a IAPI user. We are going to be returning we need an argument of an iLogin user payload, and our state is just state. So this is going to be an error as promise IAPI user. Oh, I think it's because we're typing this as T. Let's just leave this as untyped. Token. All right, so now we just do token. Or actually, sorry. We do get auth token. We call get state here. And we do the same thing here. Get auth token and get state. Oh, we have to type it like this. So let's just copy this, paste that. We'll do I register user payload. Leave that. And then we just want to return this as a promise of type I API user. Since we are returning the user object every single time that this is done. And now we can just pass this in using the thunk API instead of having to call something in here. Actually, that is going to do it for this video. In this video, we just went over setting up the API layer for our application, setting up the network and the user, and making some small changes here and there to different components. So if you like this video, remember to like, comment, subscribe for more content, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.